Now, in keeping with a little bit of a theme we've got going at the minute, when the way these videos come out, they'll all be over the place, so it won't necessarily seem a coherent theme. But we're going to make some Greek-style pita bread. Okay, so I'm only making a small portion of it, so I've reduced the recipe down. This should make, I'm just trying to think how many this is going to make. 3, it'll make 3 large pita bread, large-ish, but we quarter them. Okay, so that's what I've done with the recipe. Now you need some bread flour, some olive oil, some water, some milk, some sugar, some yeast, some salt, and some fresh thyme leaves, not the stalks, just the thyme leaves, chopped. Okay, we will need, well, we don't need, but when we serve it, you could add some more chopped thyme on top if you wished. Probably won't bother with that given how we're going to have it. Okay, but these are the kind of pita breads. They're a little bit breadish like, but you'll see once we cook them. And these would typically be what you would have with your Greek sort of chicken or pork gyros, or sausages, or just vegetables. Okay, so let's get started then. So in this bowl I've got 80 mils of milk, and I'm going to add to it 40 mils of water. Now that's sort of room temperature. Okay, and then I've got, I'm just checking here, half a teaspoon of sugar. I've got a whole teaspoon of yeast, which actually is essentially one of them packets of easy bake yeast. So in that goes. And then we're going to want to add, that was open already, a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay, and then we just give that a quick little mix, and we just leave that to stand for at least 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm just gonna, we're not trying to get, you know, a bread, a loaf. We do want it to rise a bit, the dough. Okay, but obviously we're not making a loaf. So we'll put that to one side, and then like I say, for 5 minutes, and then we'll start preparing the flour mix this is going to go into. So in my bowl already weighed out is 115 grams of bread flour, and I'll add to that half a teaspoon of salt, Himalayan pink salt, nothing to do with grease. Okay, and then half a teaspoon of, like I said, fairly finely chopped thyme leaves. Okay, in there you go. And we're just going to give them a little bit of a mix together. So like I said, if you remember, we're not making a huge amount. Okay, they're more just going to be like you might typically have as a little accompaniment to a starter, say hummus for instance. Oh, why did I mention that? Or perhaps along with your side your main dish. I wonder what we might be having. Anyway, like I say, this will probably all come out all disjointed, all the different Greek things I'm doing, so it won't necessarily all sort of necessarily at the time will flow together. But just need to leave our yeast mixture, like I say, a little bit longer, and then we'll be ready to combine it. Now you'll still want some olive oil. It gets a bit messy this one because we will be at one point rolling it on a lightly oiled surface. Alright, but in the meantime we'll just have a little break here while we wait for the yeast mix. So I'm just going to give this a little mix, and then I'm going to add a little bit, mix it in, add a bit more, mix it in, and then put the remainder in. And we're just going to give that a good old mix together. Right, need to add a little bit more flour. I think very wet. And that's partly the way in which I've reduced down the quantities. So it doesn't always work just halving everything. Okay, you can see here it is quite a wet dough. We do need it like a like a bread dough that we can knead. So I'm going to add a little bit more bread flour, and then when it's sort of at that consistency where we can knead it, I'm just going to lightly flour the surface, and we'll just knead it for about 4 or 5 minutes. It doesn't need an awful lot of kneading. Okay, and then we'll go back into the bowl, cover it over, got my homemade beeswax wrap, put that over the top, and then we'll just let it rest for 40 minutes or until it's doubled in size. Okay, and then we'll come back and get on with basically cooking it. Okay, so just get that finished off. I'll get it kneaded, like I say, 4 to 5 minutes, and then rest in for 40 minutes or so until it's doubled in size. So the dough is roughly doubled in size, it's been 40 minutes. What we're now going to do is just going to knock it back a bit, divide it into 3, because like I said, we're making 3 main Pitta breads, which will be then quarter each one. But basically, once we rolled them, we're going to cook them. So you need to put a pan on a medium heat. So we'll get that heating up, and we're just going to add a little bit of oil. If I opened it, just a little bit of oil. What I'm going to do is just wipe that round on the bottom of that, and I'm also just going to, against my better nature, drizzle some oil onto the surface there. Like I say, we're just going to knock that back, and then we want to divide that dough, which I know you can't see with that pan there in the way. We can divide that dough up into thirds, and we're going to take each one and just give it a little bit of a light little kneading round to make it to a nice little elasticy ball. And then, like I say, onto that, like the old surface. You might want a little bit more than that, it's a bit sticky. And what we're going to do is we're just going to roll it out into a rough 20 centimetre circle. And then, whoops, that's technically the 40 minutes up for rising, but like I say, it had doubled in size. So I've rolled it out fairly thinly. I wouldn't say it's exactly circular, but it doesn't really matter. And what we do now is put that into that pan, and we want to cook it for a few minutes on one side, and then they should sort of puff up slightly. And then we're just going to flip it over and do the same on the other side. Okay, pan's probably not quite hot enough yet. So I'm just going to then repeat that with all of the 2 remaining dough balls. That's it, work. All on me. And once they're then all cooked, we'll do our final little bit of preparation, if you like. Okay, so I'm just going to wait on that to get cooking. Okay, should have left the pan a bit longer, I think. It definitely helps if the pan's hot enough to start with. So I've done one, okay. I think I rolled it a little bit too thick, but never mind. The second one starting to puff up, okay. It actually sort of semi-sizzled a little bit when I first put this in the pan. So I think the trick is make sure your pan is hot enough, okay. And give that one a little bit longer, and then we'll flip it, and then we just got that last one to do. And there you go, there's the second one already done. So final one, in it goes. Let's get that cooked off. So our final little trick, I've already started one of them, is that we just cut them up into quarters. That was that really large one. I did that one into slightly smaller pieces. Okay, still got just one in the pan, take out in a second. But here's a little segment, so it does open out like a Pitta bread. A bit tricky to do it with a tiny little bit like that, but I did it. Okay. Tastes just like you expect it to. Pitta bread. Got a bit of a saltiness to it. But there you go. Greek style Pitta breads. The serving was ain't like hummus or gyros, like kebabs, or whatever else you want to do with them. So, be enjoying them later.